And so he rose from the dead. He left an empty tomb. He made public appearances. Many years ago, I was walking down a street in Chicago and I was studying there, and coming straight towards me, floating like a butterfly, stinging like a bee, was Muhammad Ali. He just happened to be my favorite boxer. My mother used to say to me, "You shouldn't be interested in boxing. You're a Christian." And I said, "Mom, you have to fight the good fight. Don't you be cheeky to me," she would say. And so here he's coming right towards me, and I can remember to this day, he was wearing a white turtleneck. He was wearing a dark blue blazer. He was wearing light blue slacks. And he was wearing blue suede shoes. I'll never forget it. See, you can't beat the real thing. I'd watched him box on television. I'd read articles and that. But this was totally different. My wife has only been a bridesmaid once in her life. But the best man has been Britain's most successful pop singer, Cliff Richard, who happens to be a Christian and happens now to have been knighted by the Queen. And when she got into the car after the wedding, 2,000 young people were screaming outside the church, and the car was being shoved and pushed. My wife hates crowds. This day she kind of enjoyed it, because she was in the car with Cliff. At the end of the day, some of us had spent time together. Cliff said to Morag, "Morag, if you don't mind my beard," because he had grown a beard for a play he was in. "If you don't mind my beard, Morag, I'll kiss you goodnight." I said, "Cliff, you could have 10 beards and she wouldn't mind." Now, I never ever saw her down on the television going to Cliff on the television. But this was the real thing. And you can't beat the real thing. And when Jesus showed himself opening, it was the real thing. Handle me and see. I was in Glasgow in a inner city school, pretty rough. And I said this illustration. You've been in school all week. It's Friday night. You're out of school. You take your girlfriend to see a movie called in another country Going to the Pictures. You go and see a movie. On the way home, you get fish and chips. Then you get to the door of her house. Let me ask you an honest question. Do you put your hand in your pocket and take a picture out of her and kiss it, or do you kiss her? And one little guy shouted out, "All depends what she looks like, mister." Kind of ruined my illustration, you know. But one of the things that you have to accept is you can't beat the real thing. And Jesus, when he showed himself openly as the real thing. Handle me and see. Thomas, reach out your hand. Check out. Now, into that situation comes not scientific evidence, because that doesn't stand up, as we've said, because it can't prove Napoleon or Caesar or anyone. But we then go to personal experience. You see, I came to that Jesus, and I personally trusted him for myself. I came to the glasses and believed they would help me. But until I put them on, I'd never get the help. I came to the chair that said it would hold me, but until I sat in it, I would never experience the benefit of its holding me. And John said, Jesus did many other miracles that are not written, but these are written that you may believe he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and that believing you might have life through his name. And there is a reality that comes from putting your faith in the evidence that's available. Now, let me ask one or two questions and then begin to tie it up. What evidence is there for personal Christian experience? Believe it or not, it's basically the same for all experience unless you go out into outer space. There are two necessary tests. Is there an objective basis for the experience? And have others had that experience? Is there an objective basis? And have others had it? And when you check out the basis for our experiences, guess what? Creation needs a creator. The design needs a designer. The order needs intelligence. That intelligent creative designer has come onto planet Earth. And given the evidence that he is who he claimed to be, because he fulfilled the prophecies, performed the miracles, and he rose from the dead. But he said that he came to give me life. And he said that he came to seek and save what was lost. And every man and woman who has come and put their faith in this objective evidence and trusted for themselves have discovered this wonderful truth that he walks with me and he talks with me and he tells me I am his own. They discover they're walking hand in hand with the Creator God. And even Albert Camus, the great existentialist philosopher of the previous century, said, there is one thing that will give meaning to life, a God. But there is none. Now that's soul-destroying to me. Having the correct answer and then telling you it's not available. That's why existentialism for me is bad news. Know what's good news? There is one thing that will give meaning to life, a God, and there is one, and he's left his fingerprints all over the creation, and he's left his design throughout the creation, and he's invaded this planet in the person of Jesus, who performed the miracles, who fulfilled the prophecies, who rose from the dead, and I've come and trusted him for myself and discovered I've been reconnected to God. And I walk hand in hand with the Creator of the universe. That's the objective basis. There is none other. It's not going to church. That makes you a churchgoer. It's not getting baptized. That makes you wet. It's belief in the person of Jesus Christ, the objective basis. And then have others had that same experience? And down through the centuries and around the world today, you find in every language almost, and every continent, and every country, that there are people who have done that and have discovered the same reality, but expressed differently within their own temperament and their own being, but all conveying the same truth. He is who he said he was, and he can do what he said he came to do. And so I personally came and I put my trust in him. For without faith, it's impossible to become a Christian. For the person who comes to God must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who diligently trust in him. Let me use an example. Christine, can you hand me up that chair, please? Thank you very much. This is a chair. It's not the type that you're going to put in your best room to show off as a Scottish antique. But chairs were created for what? To sit on. You ever seen a chair without a chair maker? You ever seen a chair that had no design? You ever seen it sat in a chair that wasn't put together properly? So some intelligent creative designer made this chair. And there comes a point where I have to put my faith in what God has made available to me. And I came to the point where I put my faith, and now looking back, I can express it more fully now. I came to the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, if you trust me, I'll save you. I knew all about it in my mind. I remember when I began to be convinced that I needed to turn from my sin and believe in Jesus. I could explain the chair, but I'd never sat in it. And what worries me is many people go to church just like going to a chair. They go to church and sing to a chair they've never sat on. They write poems about a chair they've never sat on. They put it to music and sing songs to a chair that they've never sat on. But I remember when I knew the time had come, I had to trust Jesus and turn from my sin to Him. And I was just about to sit in the chair when I thought, what about the boys at school? Oh, it wasn't that I didn't believe the chair. I was scared of the crowd. And there are some people just about to sit in the chair, and then they've got big questions. Nothing wrong with questions. Honest questions demand what? Honest answers. But I know a man who I spoke to who had no objections. And I said, Bill, do you see any reason why you shouldn't trust for yourself? And he said, no, I don't see any reason. And then I said, then would you pray him and invite him in now? And he said, oh no. I said, why not? He said, Ian, you don't realize I work in an iron foundry. And I start work tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. You know what he was afraid of? The crowd. But as a 12-year-old, I came to the point where I sat in the chair. And you know what I discovered? It held me. You know the wonderful thing about chairs? The more you sit in them, the less you think about them. And I sat in the chair and discovered what? I discovered that He began to change my life from the inside so that I was beginning to live different on the outside. He said, what do you mean here? I mean this. I used to use my fists and I used to fight. And they've rammed into many faces. And I wanted my life to change. And He began to unravel my fingers. So I began to give. Oh, not give a fist, but give to help and be kind and gracious. He began to change me. And it worried me that stealing had become so strong in my life. In shops, in houses, in people's purses. And I asked Jesus to come into my life and change me in the inside so I behave different on the outside. And from that moment, I never stole again. That was dramatic because I tried to stop many times. The problem was I always kept going back. Oh, let me confess. My mother's cookie tin, many times. They were created to be raided. I'm talking about that which did not belong to me. And so He came in and began to change me from the inside. And as I travel nowadays, I discover what? Everywhere I go, I meet people who speak languages I don't speak, and I speak languages they don't speak, and yet we get together, and through an interpreter, I listen to their worship. I don't know a thing they're saying, and I listen to their style of music, and I sometimes don't like it, and yet I'm aware we belong to each other. You know why? We've come to the same chair and sat in it, discovered the same experience, and we realize we belong to each other because we have the same God as our Father. And faith informs the mind, the emotion, and will. And with our minds, we have to check out. But we can check out and come to the point where we understand. And then we can come to the point where we're convinced we should do something about it. And that's the point I was at for years. What I'm challenging people to do is think, ask questions. But don't just ask questions, get answers. But once you've got the answers, you can have the answers and choose not to follow them. You don't believe me? Just check the roadway and see how many people keep the speed on the highway. It's not that they don't know the answer. It's they don't like the answer. And then there are those who can be disturbed and know they have to do something about it. And I was like that probably for a year. And then there comes that moment where with the will, we have to submit with our will and discover the reality for ourselves. And that's what I did. And I trusted personally the information that now I believed. And trusting, I discovered the reality that I've been enjoying now and growing in for years. Oh, what's the objection to that? Figment of your imagination. Figment of your imagination. Really? I worked in a mental hospital for a time when I was in Chicago. And can I say that again slowly and reiterate it? I worked in a mental hospital. I remember this morning, and it's a sad place to be. But I remember this morning a male orderly calling me over and saying, see that gentleman over there? He came in last night. He thinks he's President John F. Kennedy. I went over and said, hi, my name's Ian. What's your name? John F. Kennedy. You know this, in all the discussion I had with him? He knew a lot about John F. Kennedy. The only problem was, he wasn't John F. Kennedy. It was a reality, but it wasn't a truth. It was an experience, but it was not valid. Is that what Christians are? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because our faith is based on the evidence in creation and in Jesus. And if there is no God, there is no Jesus. And if there's no Jesus, there is no reality. But our reality comes from that experience of trusting for ourselves and discovering that He lives in our lives. So let me just finish this way. There's a man woke up one morning and said to his wife, honey, I'm dead. And she said, how I wish. And tried to convince him that he wasn't. Took him to the doctor. Doctor had never had a case like this. Tried to convince him. Couldn't. Sent him to a psychiatrist. He tried to convince him that dead men don't bleed. And about the 5th session, the man said, okay, I accept, dead men don't bleed. Like a flash, psychiatrist pulled his wrist across his desk, lifted up the needle, stuck the needle into his wrist, blood spurted out, and the man went, great Scott, dead men do bleed. You can never convince anyone who does not want to be convinced. But you can give the evidence for the reality that you have that causes them to ask questions. Thank you very much. Thank you.